Your DNA is a crime scene. Every gene in your body carries evidence of the most brutal mass murder in human history. A 37,000-year killing spree that wiped out millions of our ancestors. The killers are microscopic assassins so deadly they make modern pandemics look like a common cold. Here's what scientists don't want you to know. These ancient plagues didn't just disappear. They're still here, hiding in your genetic code, and they're about to rewrite everything we thought we knew about human evolution. DNA extracted from bones buried for millennia proves that many of our ancestors didn't die from war, famine, or natural disasters. They were murdered, systematically, by diseases so terrifying that surviving them literally changed what it means to be human. Their story revealed a prehistoric world where drinking water was Russian roulette, where every breath could be your last, where getting too close to another human might doom your entire family. Our ancestors lived in a biological war zone. 492 different species of bacteria, viruses, and parasites had declared war on humanity. Around 6,500 years ago, these ancient killers transformed into weapons of mass destruction. Archaeological sites show mass graves, abandoned settlements, and signs of civilizational collapse. Humanity's greatest achievement triggered this catastrophe: domestication. When humans looked at wild animals and saw partners instead of prey, they thought they were securing their future. Cattle would provide milk and meat, horses would carry them across vast distances, pigs and sheep would turn scraps into protein. Instead, they created their own nightmare. By the way, if you enjoy these sort of stories, go ahead and subscribe to our channel Ancestry Code for more sick stories about our past. Huh, get it? Anyways, back to the video. For millions of years, animals had carried their own private armies of pathogens, diseases that lived harmlessly in cattle, pigs, and horses, microscopic hitchhikers that had evolved alongside their animal hosts. These pathogens had no interest in humans because they'd never encountered them, but domestication changed everything. Suddenly, humans were sleeping next to animals, sharing living spaces, breathing the same air. Children played with calves and piglets. Farmers spent 18 hours a day in intimate contact with creatures carrying biological time bombs. It was the perfect storm for what scientists call zoonotic spillover. The moment when animal diseases discover they can jump to human hosts. And when that happened, ancient pathogens that had never bothered humans suddenly became humanity's worst nightmare. These early agricultural communities had no understanding of germs, no concept of transmission, no defense except hope and prayer. But the real catastrophe was yet to come. 5,000 years ago, a new type of human emerged from the grasslands of the Eurasian steppe. These weren't just farmers, they were nomadic herders who had taken the relationship with animals to an extreme that no one had ever attempted before. These steppe peoples lived on horseback. They followed vast herds of cattle and sheep across thousands of miles of grassland. Their entire culture, their survival, their identity was built around intimate partnership with animals. Generation after generation, they had pushed the boundaries of human-animal coexistence further than anyone before or since. And in doing so, they had become something unprecedented in human history: walking biological weapons. Decades of constant animal contact had exposed these herders to every pathogen their livestock carried. Most died, but the survivors developed something remarkable: genetic resistance. Their immune systems had been battle-tested against diseases that would kill anyone else on contact. They didn't know it, but they had become immune carriers of the most deadly pathogens on Earth: plague, anthrax, hepatitis, respiratory viruses, blood parasites. They carried them all and survived them all. Then they began to move. Climate shifts and population pressure drove these herders out of their ancestral grasslands. They spread east toward China, west toward Europe, south toward India. They brought their superior technology, their military advantages, their animals, and their invisible army of diseases. What happened next wasn't conquest in any traditional sense. It was biological warfare on a scale that had never been seen before. The genetic evidence tells a story more terrifying than any horror movie. Wherever these migrations touched, death followed. Not the quick death of battle, but the slow, inexorable death of epidemic disease. Indigenous populations who had never been exposed to these animal-borne pathogens had no immunity whatsoever. Entire communities were wiped out not by sword or spear, but by microscopic invaders their immune systems had never encountered. DNA from plague victims found near Lake Baikal in Siberia matches strains discovered in Denmark. The same deadly bacteria that killed herders in Kazakhstan appeared in graves across Central Europe. Migration routes traced by archaeologists perfectly align with the spread patterns of ancient diseases. But here's what's truly chilling. The carriers often had no idea what they were doing. They were just people following their animals to new pastures. They had no understanding that they were unleashing invisible armies that would devastate everything in their path. Archaeological sites from this period reveal the scale of the catastrophe. Mass burial grounds appear suddenly in the record. Settlements are abandoned without explanation. Cultural traditions that had persisted for millennia vanish overnight. What historians once attributed to invasion and military conquest was actually something far more sinister. The first recorded biological warfare in human history. And it was entirely accidental. The diseases didn't stop at simple killing either. They evolved, they adapted, they became more efficient at what they did best, ending human lives. Take plague, the disease that would later become history's most feared killer. In its early form, it required direct contact to spread. Infected blood, contaminated materials, close physical contact. Deadly but containable. And plague wasn't working alone. Other pathogens were perfecting their own methods of human destruction. During cold winters, when people crowded together for warmth and rarely bathed, lice populations exploded. Each tiny parasite could carry enough bacteria to kill its human host. The death rate reached 40% in some outbreaks. Mosquito-borne malaria established itself across ancient Europe, turning summer into a season of fever and death. 3 different species of malaria parasites created a coordinated assault on human population. Some caused chronic infections that could last for decades. Others killed quickly, targeting children and the elderly. Waterborne diseases turned every stream, every well, every source of hydration into a gamble with death. Bacteria that had lived harmlessly in soil suddenly found that human blood was an even better environment for reproduction. But the story took an unexpected turn around 2,800 years ago. Plague suddenly disappeared from the archaeological record. For 8 centuries, this ancient killer seemed to vanish completely. Scientists believe the original strain had evolved itself into an evolutionary dead end. Poor transmission rates meant that outbreaks burned themselves out before spreading widely. The disease that had terrorized humanity for millennia had accidentally engineered its own extinction. Or so it seemed. When plague returned 2,000 years ago, it had become something far more dangerous. The new strains could spread through flea bites, turning every rodent into a potential biological weapon. This seemingly small change transformed plague into the world-ending threat that would define medieval history. Meanwhile, other ancient enemies continued their patient work. Leprosy began its slow march through human populations. Unlike plague's quick kill, leprosy was a disease of living death, slowly destroying nerve endings and disfiguring its victims over decades. Louse-borne relapsing fever stalked northern communities every winter. Malaria turned vast regions into death zones every summer. Hepatitis weakened immune systems, making victims vulnerable to additional infections. The cumulative effect was staggering. Infectious disease was responsible for more than half of all deaths in prehistoric populations. Not war, not accidents, not old age, disease. Yet, through this biological nightmare, humanity didn't just survive. We evolved into something stronger. The great human migrations that spread disease also spread genetic resistance. Trade routes that carried pathogens also carried protective genes. Over thousands of years, mixing genetically diverse populations created increasingly robust immune systems. Modern medical research has identified dozens of genetic variations that provide disease resistance, many traceable to specific prehistoric outbreaks. The genetic mutation that provides resistance to HIV likely evolved in response to ancient viral epidemics. Genes protecting against malaria are most common in populations where the disease was historically prevalent. Your genetic heritage is a library of survival strategies written in DNA by ancestors who faced unimaginable biological threats. This discovery has revolutionized our understanding of human evolution. Disease wasn't just a threat our ancestors faced, it was the primary force that shaped who we became. The migrations, innovations, and cultural developments we celebrate as human achievements often arose from desperate attempts to survive biological warfare. And the war continues. Every modern pandemic follows patterns established thousands of years ago. Zoonotic diseases still jump from animals to humans. Global travel spreads pathogens along ancient migration routes. But now we know the secret they discovered through unimaginable suffering. Humans can adapt to anything. We can survive threats that seem impossible to overcome. We can evolve solutions to problems that appear hopeless. Every person alive today is proof that determination, genetic diversity, and the human will to survive can defeat any enemy, even invisible ones that have been hunting us for 37,000 years. The next time you fight off a cold, remember, you're using weapons forged in prehistoric plague pits by ancestors who refused to surrender. Their victory lives on in your DNA.